Tatalach oi kaloma. Hello, welcome everyone. We have a few minutes for everyone to settle in, grab some food. Hello, everyone. My name is Beth Piatot. I'm the director of the Arts Research Center. I want to welcome everyone to our final event of the year. And we are truly ending on a high note with this program, which says a lot because we've had some pretty amazing programs for the past year. Just want to throw some posters at you to give you a sense. We had an artist in residence with a collaboration with BAM-PFA with Tanya Luke and Linkletter in the fall. We had a major reclamation poetry gathering also with, yes, it was incredible. Just last week, we had the launch of our Indigenous Performing Arts Fellowship. And yes, it was amazing. I have Timmia and TDPS to thank for launching that new program. I also, here, if you just want a scene of things that happened just this term, take a look at these posters. And also grab some of our Loft Hour swag as you go, so we can relive and remember the amazing programs we've had. So yeah, check out our posters and our website for sampling of the range of programs that we've had. All of our programs, or most of our programs, are available to watch online, fully accessible. And please be sure to sign up for our mailing list if you haven't already. It's in the hallway. And stay attuned to future programs. I want to acknowledge the hard work of our Associate Director, Lori McPhee. She's going right back to work. And also our program coordinator, Lily G, our communications assistant, yes, Lily, Eva Whitney, for making this program and all of our programs possible. So one of the great triumphs of this year is that we launched this new series, The Loft Hour, to welcome, yes, The Loft Hour, to welcome new arts faculty to campus. So the format is simple. We pair two new faculty members with a conversation partner, bring in lunch, and have a chance to learn about the inspiration and the work of our new colleagues. We call it the Loft Hour for several reasons. One, we want to emphasize the Arts Research Center as a unique arts-focused space on campus, and we loved the loft vibe of our space. What says art better than a lot of open space, a couch, and a fridge in the corner? I like that. This is where it happens. Loft is also about elevating our lives through art. And our hope is that this Loft Hour will heighten your thinking and action as you go about your day and the time after we leave this space. And finally, we want to lift up the incredible artists who create with us on campus and celebrate their work. I want to acknowledge the Dean's Office of Art and Humanities for the generous grant that has made this series possible. Please grab these flyers. Yes, thank you. Please grab these flyers and bookmarks featuring the artwork of one of our new colleagues in art practice, Luann Redeye. And it has a list of our programs. So if you want to go back and check them out on our website, you'll have a good reminder. Okay, so without further ado, I will introduce our conversation partner, Abigail DeKosnik, who will then introduce Cathy Park Hong of the English Department and Timmia DeRoy of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies. It is such an incredible pleasure to introduce Abigail DeKosnik, who is on sabbatical this year and came to campus to do this. That is true devotion. Thank you. Extra points. Bonus points for Abigail, who is an associate professor in the Berkeley Center for New Media and the Department of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies, and an affiliated faculty member of the Gender and Women's Studies, Film and Media, and Folklore. She is the 2020 to 2025 Craigslist Distinguished Chair in New Media. She researches histories and theories of new media, film and television, social media, fan studies, piracy studies, cultural memory, and archive studies. She is particularly interested in how issues of gender, sexuality, ethnicity, and transnationalism intersect with new media studies and performance studies. Ducosnik is currently writing a book on media piracy in the US by queer and BIPOC users, tentatively titled Minority Piracy. She is faculty co-organizer of the Color of New Media, a working group that focuses on the overlap of critical race theory, gender and women's studies, and transnational studies with new media studies, sponsored by the Center for Race and Gender with additional support from BCNM. Ducosnik is Filipina American, and she is our conversation partner today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. What a beautiful turnout for a fantastic event that lured me out of my hobbit hole. I just want to say, as somebody on sabbatical, if I owe you about 53 emails, I'm sorry. You can get on my back about that very soon. Sabbatical ends, at the end of the semester. I'm going to introduce Timmia first, and then Timmia will come up and give us a great presentation about her work, and then I will introduce Cathy, and Cathy will do the same. So Timmia Hearn DeRoy is a practitioner and scholar of social justice-based theater and film. She was a founding member of the Trinidad and Tobago Pride Arts Festival, former director of the School for the Arts at Trinidad Theater Workshop, the Caribbean's oldest theater company, and former marketing manager at the Caribbean Tales International Film Festival. She works in areas of post-colonial theater practice, transnational feminist practice, and disability justice, and engages in community-oriented and social change focused social change focused theater across the diasporas to which she belongs. Timmia's directing credits include 10,000, a one-woman new play development by Victoria Torian at the Lawrence Arts Center in 2020, In the Blood by Susan Laurie Parks at the KU University Theater in 2019, an original musical comedy called Bus de Marque in 2016, which premiered at the I Am One Pride Arts Festival in Trinidad, and more. Timmia holds a PhD and an MA in Theater and Performance Studies from the University of Kansas and a BA in Theater Studies from Yale University. Please welcome Timmia.
Thank you so much. And because Gail is on sabbatical and because I was a new professor last semester, we shared an office. So I'll say she's wonderful in person as well. So thank you, Gail. I stole all of her cups. Hi, I'm Timmia, and I'm really excited to be here today. And I'm going to talk you through some thoughts that I'm playing with today. It's all new and developing, and I'm not sure where it's going yet, so any ideas from you would be welcome. So I have this theory, right? I have this and for the TDPS people among you, you may have heard me give some of this talk before, so I apologize in advance if I am boring. But I have this thought, right? Or I have this concept that keeps playing in my mind, and at first I thought it was kind of silly, and then the more that I say it to people, like all kinds of different people across disciplines and spaces, and I keep getting nods, I think that I might be onto something. So this is the thing that I keep saying, right? Which is, the only thing in the world is storytelling. That's it. There's nothing else. There's no other thing than storytelling. And of course, this is an evolution out of Sandra Harding's standpoint theory, right? If we throw out concepts of objectivity, if we ground ourselves in the concept, in the reality that all of our knowledge and understanding of that knowledge is grounded and formed by our experiences and our unique positionalities, then we have to take a step further back and ask what forms those experiences. How do those experiences come to exist? They don't just exist. They come from somewhere. How and through what lens do we experience the world, and how do we know what we know? And where is the knowledge coming from? Well, through storytelling. So, as my research collaborator and life partner, Pierre DeRoy, said to me the other day, storytelling organizes how we see reality. And that really resonated with me. The way in which we experience our lives is completely based on stories, completely based on how we tell the story of ourselves, how others tell the story of themselves, and also, how mathematicians tell the story of the way in which our world works, how cinematographers organize the way that we see through the lens of the media or the movie that we're watching, how the school teacher tells the story of history. Every single discipline is just a matter of telling different stories, whether you're studying language and the way language organizes the world, or whether whether you're studying gender and sexuality, or whether you're studying ancient runes, it's all stories. They're all forms of stories. And so as we all, and these are, of course, on the screen here, various theater and dance performances throughout history who have inspired me, stories that helped me organize my world and how I see the world. I start off with this sort of heightened philosophical space to situate the methodology that I'm developing, which is called narrative justice storytelling. And so I'm telling you the story of my research so that you're with me. So here are some of the tenets of narrative justice storytelling. It asks us to ask ourselves as we go about telling the various stories that we tell from whatever discipline it is, whose perspective is centered, how is the story structurally told? So not just what story is being told, but the method in which that story is told. What is the format? What is the language? What is the media? All of these things. Who has access to these medias? Who is the story being told to is a really big one that we often don't think about. Who has access to hearing this story? Whether that's who has access to know that this is all filmed on the ARC website, or who has the linguistic capacity to understand it, or who understands the technology to take it in. Who is hearing the story has to be considered in the way in which the story is told, and then, of course, who benefits and who's controlling the story. Narrative justice storytelling is a methodology that enables, at least I hope it enables, researchers across disciplines to expand and challenge the ways we think about subalternity and accessing power. If Gayatri Spivak's proverbial subaltern is unable to speak, the act of speech moves one out of the subalternated position, then the power structure is static and immobile, despite cultural, individual, and collective malleability. So narrative justice storytelling challenges the concept of speech as static and power access as static, and asks us, how are we accessing that power? From what angle are we accessing that power? And what does power even look like? So I'm currently teaching this post-colonial theater class, right? And in this post-colonial theater class, one of the things that we've been asking ourselves over and over again is, how do you myth bust? Like, when you have a myth that is clearly not true or that you don't think is true, what are you going to do about it? And my students have collectively decided that you just have to make a better myth. So the storytelling is the myth. We are enabled with our various capacities to tell a better, a different, a new story. And so we do this in multiple ways. So I've broken this idea of storytelling down into 4 stages. So narrative justice storytelling is not just the fact that we tell stories, but the point of narrative justice storytelling as a methodology is meant to shift power towards what we consider to be justice. That's subjective. I admit, I acknowledge. But so the 4 stages that allow us as storytellers, what does storytelling enable us to do is what I'm trying to say. And by us, I mean those who exist at the margins, those who have experienced injustice. How does this methodology help us as storytellers shift from a place of injustice to a place of justice? So I break this down into 4 stages. They don't have to be linear, there's just 4 of them. So stage 1, for the sake of ease, is survival. So what are the stories that allow the people at the margins, the people whose voices, whose lives, whose experiences are marginalized, to want to survive? The first step has to be wanting to survive, because at the point before you want to survive, life doesn't have any meaning. The story doesn't matter. So what are the stories that enable people? How does the story that you're telling enable people to want to survive? The second stage is, once you want to survive, understanding that you are not in your best space, how can you emancipate from the chains that hold you? So how does the story contribute to emancipation? 3, once emancipation has occurred, how does the story contribute to reparation? Because harm has been done. So once the freedom has occurred, once the chains have been broken, once the shift has happened from the margin to the center, how do you repair? And if you can't repair, you can't move on to the final stage, which is self-determination. So this works for individuals, this works for collectives, this works for cultures, this works for laws. And so right now, what I'm working on is figuring out how to apply this method and this theory across disciplines, not just in theater studies and performance studies where I exist. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I developed this, because I think it's helpful to understanding how it works in a broader sense. So I sit on the work of Tony Hall, who I will always bring up and show pictures of because he was my mentor, and he took something that was very specifically culturally Trinidadian. My family is from Trinidad and Tobago on one side, and he made it really widely applicable across across the space. So Tony Hall invented this thing that he calls Juve popular theater process. So in Trinidad and Tobago, there is this celebration called Juve. It's part of Carnival, which you may have heard about. Carnival is sort of a large street celebration. In Trinidad and Tobago, it has direct links to the emancipation of enslaved people and has developed in a multicultural, cross-cultural way over the last 200 years. And Juve is a contraction, a creolization of the French words jeu ouvert, the day open. And so Juve is a celebration of the sunrise. We wake to the sunrise, you cover yourselves in mud or paint, you dance as the sun rises. It's a rebirth, a rejuvenation, a coming together, a collective memory, a ritual practice. And so Tony took this ritual practice that he had been practicing his whole life, and he turned it into what he calls Juve popular theater process, which was a methodology through which he could teach students across the different countries that he worked in how theater can be not just performing a story, but rejuvenation, practice of story for the people participating in it. It was a reclaiming of the theater for ritual. Oftentimes the theater is divided into ritual practice or festival and theater and art. And this collapses those two and says that the theater is a ritual, and that the ritual can be participatory and can be constant emancipation, it is self-emancipation. So this is where I originally started working. And then in Tony's Juve popular theater process, that's just the explanation that I just gave you. In his theater process, he talks about this thing called local mud. So in Juve, you cover yourself literally with mud and dance. But local mud is this idea that you cover yourself with the mud that you're standing in. And the whole point of narrative justice storytelling is to understand that it's not just our histories, as in our embodied histories, where we come from and where we live, but where we stand. What is the land that we stand on? When we did the Dinanishla, the play that we did for the Indigenous residency, we talked a lot about land theft, not just land acknowledgement, but land theft. And what does it mean to stand now on the land of the Ohlone people that we stand on? And how do we deal with those histories, not just by saying, okay, yes, we stole your land. And what does it mean that you now stand on that land? How do you work with that land? How do you reconcile your own personal histories with the stories that you're telling? And are the stories grounded in the mud that you're standing in? The stuff that gets on your shoes, but also the stuff that gets in your mind, the ways in which you interact with other people. So I pulled out of Tony's larger ritual process this concept of local mud, and I started working on where does local mud come from? How do we get to local mud? What does it look like to put on a play that is grounded in local mud? So for my first research semester here at Berkeley, where I was here on Berkeley's payroll, but not here at Berkeley, I did a play that I wrote, which was called Unborn Children and Ghosts, which looked at my own journey through pregnancy and talked about sort of the ghosts that we hold and what does it mean to deal with our ancestral baggage as we go into making this new life. And so here, with this play that I wrote, I grounded it in local mud. These are some of the actresses who were in the show that I worked on, and each one of them had a personal, deeply grounded connection to the text that we were performing. On the right-hand side, you see my mother-in-law, whose story was told literally in the play. Parts of the script were literally her story being reenacted, and she's wanted to be an actress since she was a little girl and never got to be, so this was a really exciting experience for her to get to work with professional actors. Then there's Carmel Garcia, who is a local actress and a doula in Kansas, in Topeka, Kansas, which is where the play took place. Then there is Gabrielle Smith, who's actually a former student of mine at the University of Kansas, who's now an actress, who has histories that link through the play. And then on the far left is Sarah McGuire, who's a local Leawood, Kansas actress who is playing a white queer woman going through a pregnancy journey, who is a white queer woman in Kansas and who is thinking about going through a pregnancy journey. So each one of the characters in the play were playing somebody who was deeply, deeply rooted in their own experiences. And as we went through the play, my entire point was not to say, this is my story, but to say, how is this your story? And we edited the script as we went along, and everybody in the play got to put their own perspective into the text, into the script, and understand it as their own story. I write plays that are meant to be edited. They're not in any way fixed. They're like, here's a framework, go do the thing. I'm trying to figure out how that works when you publish. So, if anyone has ideas, please help me. But we we create this narrative justice playmaking through performance and audience engagement, which is really critical. This active listening that we engage in not only in the rehearsal space, but also in our performance spaces. Somatic engagement, the physical engagement of the body. Healing happens through activation of our nervous system, and so much of contemporary theater and film makes us stay static in the audience, and all we're experiencing is here. And so in Juve popular theater practice, in a carnival, in a ritual performance, you are actually shaking your body, you're singing, you're dancing, you're moving. And so I'm engaging that in the sort of more traditional Western space. And then local mud as the center of the directing practice. Instead of bringing a directorial vision to the project, I'm going, okay, how does this work here? How does this work now, and how does it work for you? So this was the play that we did. We got some nice coverage. And this was something that came out of it. It's this idea of embodied specific. I'm sure you've heard of, many of you have heard of site-specific performances, where it's all about the space that you're in. How do you create a piece of theater there? But what about the embodied specific performance? What does it look like when a different actor takes on a different role? All of our experiences are there, and instead of submerging the person into this fictive role, the idea of embodied specific performance is you take the fictive role and you put it in yourself and you figure out how it feels. And then you work through what does it mean to be that person performing that piece. So this is actually a clip of Juve, which I just thought I would bring to give us a little bit of a oral and visceral experience of this, what this ritual feels like as you move through the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. This is 2013. The music is by Tree Canal, a music group who's been performing since the 90s, who just did their last Juve ever this last year, and I wasn't there, and it broke my heart. I played with them for years, so I was somewhere in this crowd here. This was during the time I was starting to develop these thoughts, but I just wanted to show you sort of what the performance of this, these are just people, you know, nobody is, well, there's some actors among them, but this is not about being an actor, this is about finding self within a crowd of other people also finding self. So we'll move on from that. This is we're just going to look at the video of it while I talk. This is a video of also 2013 of a mask character that I performed as. So the person on this, that's me over there. But so this is a ritual practice of performing a masquerade character that we developed together in 2011 to 2014. And I just wanted to show the sort of, again, the performance aspect of participatory action, and the fact that these stories are told for, by, and about the people who are embodying them, and who do you choose to embody. And of course, Carnival is a very literal exploration of this kind of embodiment. But how can we, as storytellers across disciplines, take the embodied specific element of Carnival and put it in all of our practices? And so this is what narrative justice storytelling as a theory starts to develop, is this idea of how do we tell stories, who do we tell them for, and what perspective and element of participation does the story have in it. So it's an interdisciplinary, practice-based framework and methodology, and this summer I will be further testing it and exploring it through a documentary I'm filming called Birthing Inequities. It's a documentary project that it's exploring, again, reproductive narratives that are directly impacting people in my family. And we're going to be exploring how narrative justice storytelling changes the trajectory of research. So it focuses on a researcher who's doing research on maternal mortality, and how using the narrative justice storytelling practice can influence the way in which policy is understood so that it can be written differently. So I'll end with that, and I don't know how long I talked, but hopefully it wasn't too long. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening.
All right, while I introduce Cathy, she is going to be hooking up her laptop to the projector. So, and I'll bring this back to Timmia. Okay, the wonderful Cathy Park Hong, standing right next to me, is a writer and poet who has published 3 volumes of poetry with her creative nonfiction book, Minor Feelings. Everybody read that if you haven't. Yeah. being both a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and it also received the National Book Critics Circle Award for autobiography. She was also named on Time's 100 Most Influential People of 2021 list, as well as a recipient of the Wyndham Campbell Prize, the Guggenheim Fellowship, and a National Endowment for Arts Fellowship. A child of Korean parents, Cathy grew up in Los Angeles before earning her BA from Oberlin College and her MFA from Iowa Writers Workshop. So please welcome Cathy Park Hong.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you, ARC, for inviting me to do this, talk. And Timmia, it was really a pleasure to hear your discussion about narrative storytelling. There's a little bit of storytelling that I'm going to do via poems. I'm actually just going to just read a few poems within the span of 10 minutes. So I thought I would first give a little introduction, just a little bit, of what I'm working on right now. I'm actually trying to work on 2 books. It's trying. This is the operative word. But they both have to do with mothers. You know, that was something that you also talked about. And perhaps I'm interested in the profiles, personas, and personal accounts of what society has deemed bad mothers. And I was really aligned with what the scholar Jacqueline Rose said, how in her book she wanted to raise the ante and have a truer, more virulently exhilarating and disturbing account of motherhood in our general culture, and how she wanted to really expose the immense equivocation and difficulty and psychic painfulness, as well as the joys of being a mother. So the one book that I'm working on is a kind of novel, but I like to call it documentary fiction because it's a little bit hybrid, and, only because it's actually based on real historical figures. It's about North Korean terrorist who killed 117 people when she bombed Korean Air in 1987. And she was actually arrested in South Korea. She lived through that, and she was miraculously pardoned. And a lot of people at the time thought the reason why she was pardoned was because she was beautiful. She was 25 at the time, a virgin, which they headlined everywhere, the virgin terrorist. But anyway, she ended up marrying the security agent who spied on, who interrogated her in South Korea, and she had 2 children. So she's one mother. And the other one is just a book of poems that I'm simply titling Mothers. And it's from, Before Minor Feelings, I really loved working on different, I wrote poetry like a fiction writer, where I wrote from the perspective of different personas and invented cities and landscapes. And I'm sort of returning to that, where I'm kind of writing from the alter egos of different mothers who inhabit the myth and history of bad mothers, from Medea to Mia Farrow, who is both, a victim of Woody Allen for not protecting her child, but also who has a brood of Asian adopted children. And then I'm also influenced by this one artist, Tala Madani. She's a Persian artist, and she made a series of paintings called Shit Moms. These are her shit mom. That's a shit mom. And what she said was her process was she wanted to paint a mother and child just to get it out of her system. She became a mom. And she did a painting of a mother and 2 small children. But she said it was so awful, so cliche and kitsch that I couldn't even stand it, even being there. So I started wiping it off, smearing the mother away. The children were still pristine. but the mother became quite shitty looking. And I thought, wait a second, where did that come from? It's shit mom. So she did a series of these really amazing, hilarious, and very profound paintings of shit mother figures. And so in the collection, I'm also sort of doing an ekphrastic series based on these paintings. But lastly, so the poems that I'm going to read to you is also from this collection. They're actually not. These are the poems that are kind of complete, I guess. They're not necessarily about shit mothers, but they're actually these two poems, two sequences. One sequence is called Spring and All, about my own sort of experiences as a mother during the pandemic. And then the other one is called The Flood. And the flood is, can you see that? The flood is about an invented seaside town that's loosely based on the seaside towns in Japan that were totally destroyed by the tidal wave around the time of Fukushima. And, and a mother who loses her daughter as a result of the flooding. So I'll start with Spring and All. Let me also just preface, the word mak is a Korean word that means coarsely, but it's also a kind of traditional Korean practice or an aesthetic that's about making objects that are rough hewn, where you see the tactility of the maker's hands. And Spring and All, of course, is based on the William Carlos Williams book. Mak is the touch of the potter, the thumbprint on clay, the unfinished warp of wood and braille of grain, and knob of rope that hangs the squid that is dried for days, then eaten with wine fermented from dredges of rice. The Joseon potter adjoins two hemispheres to make a white lopsided moon. Exult in these imperfections, the act of creation felt in the thing, not the smooth, not the screen. And this grief that has no release grows inward, rooting into my spine, and from my head sprouts a flower of gossamer blood threads. Bash it in. And the stones weep water, and the stars sink underwater. A puddle of tadpoles tickle her cupped, sunlit palms, 20 squirming commas, each with a beating heart. Amphibians are living sponges for pollutants. She released them into the pond. I tell my glum students who are trapped on Zoom, I'll set up a Google Doc where we'll share favorite poems that remind us of touch. And poems appear like a scattering of ants. And trail off. Why bother? Jerking off's numbing. Vibrator needs charging. Can't tickle yourself when you can predict your own movements. A poem can't replace his breath, my ear, spanking that ass. Volunteers at the NICU, massaging preemies, tender newts, so they'll thrive. Oh, cats and thorns that leave a glove of hives. My mother never learned how to hold a baby, though she spoon-fed me till I was 5. She was a devoted mother, the obit says, when they didn't know a thing about her. This is the next sequence of poems called The Flood. Hell is not a pit of fire, but the icy shell of a town after the demonic tide recedes. Mud gluts out of the windows, mud in sinks, in beds, in every hole and crack. Sleet and snow feather the mud, and yes, that's an arm, a hand, a head, and snow furling the ear, vacated by confused spirits who flap wildly in this town like pigeons freed from coops. I want to go home, cries the soul who pierced a bystander. Her mother found her in the gym among rows and rows of muddy bodies in tarp. Mother wiped mud from daughter's face with towels, but when all the towels were filthy, mother wiped mud from daughter's face with her own shirt. When her shirt was filthy, mother licked mud from daughter's face, prying open her eyelids with her tongue to suck clean her eyes so they were not two slits brimmed in mud, but spotless and white, looking nowhere. No words. Let me see you, let me see you, let me see you, let me join you, let me walk into the sea swarming with lionfish in the starless sable night. But I am scared. I fail. I cough back to shore. But she lives on. I visit her. I see her. I see her. I visit. I see her. Frail in the starless black night, I see her. I am none wiser. I am none wiser for it. Breath on my neck, breath on my neck, hers. I see her, I do. I drop the acacia bark, I pound to powder. Go back in time to sentinels where lynx collared guards stand while the bells ring and ring, courtiers tending to her like sparrows. There she is, the king. Yes, she is the king, enrobed in wild red silk. Three. What people don't tell you is that the ghosts outnumber the living. They refuse to leave us. They are stuck. They cannot go forth into the light because they cannot get over their unjust deaths. What sadistic God chooses to condemn victims to this purgatory while remorseless predators slip into his eternal white light? Unwanted newborn girls are no more than a breath of cold air, sometimes a song in the wind chimes. I smell their fontanelle, their pink armpits. My daughter, at least, darts back and forth across time like a mysterious silver aircraft. She writes me letters constellated in phosphenes. I am here before humans walk the earth. And I am so happy. I am at peace. Four. I have forgotten my body. I have forgotten my darkened labia, the gray tufts that surround my labia, my long nipples. I have forgotten my body, the crust in my eyes, the rings I count around my neck, the hair I no longer darken. I have forgotten the moles on my neck. I have forgotten to tie a hair follicle around each mole till it chokes and falls off. I have forgotten all parts of my body, the gaps in my teeth, my graying, receding gums. I have forgotten love, touching. What is touching? But the sour rage that scrapes through me like a whistling wind through caves, stirring nothing. I feel nothing but the sag of my jowls hinting at what will be a jawbone left on the sand, the incisors missing, fossilizing, not my soul, my grief, nothing at all but my pathetic diet. I am old. I am old. My knees clack when I run. Look at that old freak run. Look at her stumble away from the forgotten who drift towards her like fog, and the bed shakes, and it shakes, and the moon's ivory sickle bloodies the sky. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, thank you so much, Cathy and Timmia. We're gonna move up here. I'll be on the right, and you two will be right there, and we can share these two mics. And I will get the questioning started. Is this okay, Beth, or should we just yell like this? What do you think? Okay, we'll use the mic. Okay. Oh, it's for the recording. All right, great. So I'll get a question started, and then I hope people will think about what you want to ask these brilliant artists and jump in, please, in just a second. All right. So my first thought, as soon as you finish reading, Cathy, and it also ties in with a lot of Timmia's work, is that in order to be a person of color in this country, and in order to be a woman and an immigrant in this country, you have to live with a lot of pain. You know, you just have to. And what art is so great for, or what art is effective for, is allowing us to look at the hard things, allowing us to be with the pain, and allowing others, you know, the people, your audiences, your readers, allowing them a way to experience and re-experience the pain in a way that they can, you know, so that they don't run away from it, so that they don't flinch away. And I would just like to hear you two, if anything comes to mind, just at my observation, like, how do you as the artist process that pain? Or how do you keep your co-participants, your performers safe? Or what does it mean to really dwell almost, you know, not almost, definitely in a spiritual way with the hardship such that it doesn't destroy you? Yeah, I would just love to hear both of you talk about anything that comes to mind.
Do you want to start?
Hello. Thank you, Gail, for that question. It's a really important question, and it's one that I've wrestled with quite a bit because, yes, there's a lot of pain, but I think there's also a danger of someone of color being, as it's been done by, you know, the culture at large, where pain becomes a stand-in for the self, right, for the person of color. Where there's an expectation that you will exhibit that, display that pain for others. And it's something that I write about in Minor Feelings, and it's something that I've always thought about really ever since I started writing poetry. And I guess for me, what's really essential is that I try to show the wide spectrum of human experience, you know. So yes, there is pain, but it's also essential for me to show the banality of life and the joy, and also the flaws. I mean, one thing, like when I was writing Minor Feelings, and the reason why I was really attracted to stand up, and this was when I was writing an essay on Richard Pryor. I was really interested in the idea of failure, right? And failure not just in terms of the trauma one has experienced and trying to get over that trauma, but how, you know, how people of color, not necessarily victims, they are also they also victimize. And as we're seeing right now with Gaza and Palestine, and it was really important for me to show how, like say for Asian Americans, or at least for myself as an Asian American, I'm also flawed. And as much as I hurt, I'm also a jerk, and I'm sort of fascinated. I'm more interested in the kind of contradictory spectrum of emotions that we don't see as much in literatures by people of color. Now we're seeing it a lot more. So that's one way I'd answer that question. And of course, for me, it is there is still that pain that comes from intergenerational trauma, or coming from a family who's been affected by empire and war and so forth. And I think the way I tackle it, or the way I'm interested in it, and this would be my novel that I'm working on now, is to address it from many different perspectives. Just address it from my personal perspective, and also by talking to others, and how, if there is that pain, how different that pain is, and how differently that pain is manifested. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's very, it's a deep conversation with my perspective on it. I like to say that artists often come to the creation process to exercise the ghosts or the demons. But once you've exercised the demons, where do they go? Do you just fling them at your audience to then suffer? So that's kind of where I came to narrative justice storytelling, is this idea of I don't want to just exercise demons at the audience. That's not my goal. I would like to meet the demons and say, hello, how are you? Why are you so angry? Can I help you not be so angry? And there's this social scientist, education scholar named Jiang Ri, who wrote this wonderful book, which is escaping me in the name right now, but it's on ghosts, and it's about her own relationship with her mother, so it's very relevant to this conversation about mothers. And she talks about ghosts as, she says, the ghosts that haunt us are the stories that we couldn't finish. The stories that we don't know how to finish, that just sit in the corners of your mind and bother you. Those are the ghosts. Those are the things that haunt them. And so for me, my whole art practice is about finding out those ghosts, and then, like talk therapy, you find a better story for the ghost. And then maybe the ghost doesn't go and haunt somebody else, but the ghost instead can create a different history. All of my work is about not just sitting in the pain, but trying to cry through the pain, to laugh through the pain, to roll around on the floor through the pain, and through that somatic engagement to release it. And I think that it's really tempting. One of my favorite poems, Adrienne Rich, has this series of poems called 21 love poems. They're actually 22. One of them is untitled. They're called 1 through 21, but one of them is untitled. And number 8 has the line in it, I see myself at Sunyan years back, Philoctetes in woman's form. And then it ends with, I will move from here, this was right after she met her life partner, I will move on from here with you, fighting the temptation to make a career of pain. And a line from that is on my wedding ring. That poem influences all I was at a point in my life when I read that poem where I was just revisiting the pain. All of my art was about how much can I cause my audience to suffer, How much can I get them to see what we've been through, what I've been through? And I moved from a place of you must feel my pain to how can I heal from my pain? And how through my process of healing can you join in that process? Because whether you sat, and my ancestors sat on all different sides of the oppression conversation, how do you heal from collective trauma, whether or not you are a traumatizer or traumatized? And I think we sit in this moment where we are collectively trying to cope with our narratives, this, post-internet moment where we all have to face each other's realities, whether we like it or not. And you have to change the story, and you have to change the history, because the history wasn't right to begin with. So when you start digging up all those damn ghosts, you have to do something with them. Otherwise, they just sit there on top of you. So for me, let's make the ghosts dance. I don't know if that helps. I don't know if that's an answer, but that's where I am.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Let's hear from the audience. Oh, let me do a quick time check. Let's see. Okay, we have 1 minute. Can we get one question from the audience? All right, then maybe we'll conclude here. Does that seem right, Beth? Sure. Okay. And mill about and enjoy each other's company. And perhaps our guests, our wonderful speakers, can stick around for just a moment to speak to the audience as well. And thank you so, so much for coming today. This was truly phenomenal. Thank you all. Thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to mention there is going to be a second event here today at 5 o'clock. We are co-sponsoring with the Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies, and I do need my glasses here. Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies graduate group looking for Jackie, Gaysian Archival Fantasies, and it's Wen Tong Hong. Am I close? Associate Professor of Literature and Cultural Studies, is going to be here tonight, free and open to the public, starts at 5 o'clock, so I hope you can join us. And please, take food with you. Thanks.